Hey man, who feeds the man that feeds the man?
Hey, one time for the man. One time for the man that feeds the man. Hold up. One time for the people.
It's all about the people. It's all about the people. And today's episode is particularly about the people because it is important to acknowledge that for me and you specifically, let me not say me and you specifically, for people whose work centers around people, it's always a beautiful day when we get to celebrate the people. And that's exactly what today's episode is going to be about. The Black celebration of Black people, essentially.
That's right. That's right. Not no normal celebration of Black life. You know what I'm saying? Not no normal Black History Month episode. You are getting the all the way live celebration of Black people, culture, community. Welcome.
we're not as serious as we need to be for how serious of a conversation we need to have, is what I want to point out before we start.
When you said count me in, I immediately went to gunshots. I was like, oh,
one gunshot.
Come in. One gunshot for the count. One for the money. Two for the show.
Well, how could I miss my mark being counted in like that? Listen, people, everybody, welcome to the All the Way Live podcast. Absolutely welcome. My name is Velake Gila. I'm here with my co-host, my brother, co-founder, Miles Xavier. And this show over here is nothing more than carefully curated conversation for your cranium. And how we have broken that show up is into three different parts: that stumble upon, current news, and recommended and review. You see, we chop this show up intentionally to make sure that we give the people what they want. And don't we do it? One gunshot for the people, please.
One gunshot for the people. One gunshot for us.
Thank you for that, Miles. I'm very happy that you gave us a gunshot. You know, sometimes it's important to give yourself a gunshot.
It is important. I want all of y'all out there, give yourself a gunshot, pat on the back, little fist pound. If you got somebody with you, get them a fist pound. Show love, man. Matter of fact, let's just acknowledge it's Valentine's Day this side. Y'all gonna get it a little bit after. Hope y'all are enjoying a beautiful Valentine's Day this evening. And when this message receives y'all, that any fights that y'all got into over the holiday have been resolved.
But dude, this episode drops on Wednesday. By Wednesday, you should be over your Valentine's fight.
We praying that they will be. We praying that they will be. Y'all got into a little Malcolm and Marie over the Valentine's Day. We hope that y'all are back to the happy, monogamous bliss or whatever y'all be doing out there.
Speaking of Malcolm and Marie, Miles Xavier, which goes back into how we've broken up this show and carefully curated it for the people. Today on Stumble Upon, we'll be talking about Judas and the Black Messiah. Now, this particular conversation is going to be the anchor to the theme of this episode, which is just blackity blackness. That's what it's about.
I'm black, y'all, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm black, and black, and I'm black, y'all. We black, y'all.
I was gonna say one gunshot for being black, but I figured that I don't know if that. Yeah, I don't want to encourage that type of verbiage.
Oh, thanks.
That being said, moving right along, there we go. Recommended and reviewed. Now, this personally is my favorite part of the show because, Miles, you want to tell people why this is our favorite part of the show?
Because we get to interact with the people.
Get to interact with the people.
AKA the people's part of the show. That's what we're going to call that.
The people's part of the show. I like that. Well, on recommended and review, this is where we get to hear from you guys what we should look into, what we should break down, what we should recommend and or review. And people have been asking for, bro, Malcolm and Marie. We got to talk about. Oh, yeah, Malcolm and Marie. We got to talk about it.
You got it.
Malcolm and Marie. That's what we're talking about today. Listen, there's a lot to get to. And I don't know where you want to be able to start this, but absolutely welcome, man. Welcome. Do we have an applause? Do you have an applause sound over there?
We don't have an applause. Applause sounds too white. It's a whole bunch of white people. Yeah, woo! We need a black.
That's a rap,
hey,
man.
brother. We need a hey, brother. that brother talking. We need one of those. A bunch of black people.
You don't hear black people yee very much. There's not a lot of that.
Nah. But yeah, man, Joe Burger's in the building. Chicago's in the building. On this side, the building is in Chicago. It's still cold. It's still frozen ice all over the ground, all over the land. But we need to acknowledge that this land that we are filming on this side, this space that has brought so much to my life and my brother Zway's life, is stolen land. The land that we're recording this podcast on right now, on this side, is the land of the Potawatomi people, the Council of the Three Fires, people that were forcibly removed from that land. The history of violence that was done to them is inseparable from the state we find this city in, violence that we've seen perpetrated in this city, which will also tie back into Judas and the Black Messiah. Uh, and yeah, man, the state we find this country in, and the state we find ourselves in, bro. So we lift up love for Native Americans the world over, for the connection and love between Black and brown people the world over. Intro over. Let's get into the show, man.
Let's
What's
get
good with
into it,
you, brother?
man. You know what we haven't done in a minute is the dap up, which I feel like today is extra important. That being
Dap on me.
said, yeah, the
Dap on me.
glare. You good with that glare? You good with that glare? We haven't done the dap up in a minute, my brother. And the dap up always has started from a place of asking a very important question that people, men, specifically black men, or let me rather say my experience, what I've seen as black men, not asking each other, how you doing, what you bringing into this space, and how you feeling, my brother.
I'm good, man. I'm shining as you see and cleaning this off. Y'all, man, get y'all right.
The glare is still there. That's perfect, right there. You good?
All right. I'm good, player. I'm good. You know what I'm saying? I come to y'all. Did I say cold? Man, is it cold out here? We've been dealing with negative temperatures, all types of snow flurries, man. Me and the homie downstairs have been digging people's cars out every like day or so, man. People are getting all types of stuck in the snow, but there's something beautiful and resilient about people that are taking care of each other, checking on each other in the cold, man. So yeah, I come to you definitely dealing with that, being mindful of even myself, like checking in and being like, yo, I'm not getting as much sun. I'm not getting as much time outside. Like, am I cool? And it's, of course, as I say that, the sun will not leave me alone during my recording and podcast time. But, you know, it's all good. So, yeah, man, I come to you with that energy, bro. I also feel like blessed, man. I feel blessed to be, you know, as chaotic a time as we live in. It's also a very special time. I think it's a time of people where people are being forced to make choices, if nothing else, right? Are being forced to decide what they stand on, what means something to them, what doesn't. And I think that I'm super fortunate just to be challenged by the people that are in my circle, yourself included. Some of the people that I work with, just I find myself having challenging conversations on a regular, and approaching every weekend with just like an entire, you know, notebook of things to read and to check out and to follow up on, just because there's so many amazing things happening. You know, there's so much I want to be up on and know. So I come to you, and man, life is fruitful, it's bountiful. Every direction I look, there's more to experience and enjoy. So yeah.
That's great energy, man. That's absolutely great energy, especially when you take into account how, um, as you said, the times are definitely weird. I was speaking to some people who do the work from home, but speak about how now that barrier of line between work-life balance is even more thrown off than it was before, because everyone's at home and they expect you to always be in front of your computer and all that, right? So it's important to point out just like the value, and let me rather say the appreciation we have of being able to have a space like this and come and speak to people. That's very fulfilling on our side, you know. And so if I have to tap in with that, I come with the utmost of gratitude to the work that we're doing, to the people that be listening to this, everybody that's been tuning in, man. That stuff means a lot to us. It gives us energy to keep going. And as we always say, like, this show is totally built around the feeling that we used to get from our personal conversations, and be like, man, this is such a, these conversations leave us feeling a great, leave us with a good feeling, very motivated feeling and positive energy. And we wanted to bring that to the people. So for me, regardless of what I feel, every time I step up into the space, I'm overwhelmed by the energy that we manifested in it. So I'm appreciative of that, and also ready to work, man. This is a worker's year, is what it seems like.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of those times where, yeah, if it's, well, I think we're also in a very pivotal point of life, right? Where this is, I think, part of the time where you have the most energy, you have the most opportunities with, and responsibilities only increase from here, right? So as I look around, if there were ever a time to put the foot all the way down on the gas, this would be it. So I definitely see this time as that for me. But I also see it reflected in different people in different stages of life. You know, I see a lot of people facing challenges, right? People that are uh like even I look at my brother, bro, and like so, and I'm sure I mentioned this on the pod before, as somebody whose college experiences were disrupted by having to come home for COVID. I look at folks who, you know, were working the same job for years and years and years, you know, that was disrupted during COVID, and it's just like, man, as much as this is definitely a year to work, this is also a year to uh, just acknowledge that nothing is promised. So I hope that everybody out there is both preparing for the future, but also just being extremely grateful for the things that are in our lives. You know what I mean? The things
Yeah.
that we have no control over, but that aren't going poorly, right? I think that's important to acknowledge as well.
Mm. No, that's real. Yeah, that son is chasing you.
I want to be honest with the people, man. This one did not come to y'all without a struggle. This one did not come to y'all without a fight, man. We've been intro this thing about 14 times. We done 27 dap ups, but we are here to bring y'all the All the Way Live podcast and all this glory and glamour. Brothers way, chairman's way. I seen a movie recently that moved my soul, shook
Tell
the
me about
foundation
it.
of my belief.
Tell me about it.
Reminded me of the strength of my community, the beauty of my community, and that we cannot be stopped by the pigs or any other force that seeks to keep us underfoot. We are seeds. They buried us. Now watch us grow. This way I saw Judas and the Black Messiah this week.
Amen. Amen. Listen, what I appreciated most about this film is that it's a document, like a lot of these black hero stories tend to follow a very similar pattern, right? Granted, it is a hero's tale, and hero's tales have a general structure to it, which is, you know, introduction, glory, struggle, triumph, and or death. And in the case of black heroes, that's death is usually how it ends up going. So
It's gonna be death.
it's gonna be death for sure. So what I appreciated about this how they told this story is them getting into the psyche of Lakeith Stanfield character. I thought that was absolutely brilliant in how they did that.
Important to acknowledge, I think, also that when you're telling the story of someone who, to me, certainly, and to a lot of people, is a hero, right? Lived as a hero. Um, it's a risky choice to dedicate as much time in what could be considered a biopic in an autobiographical piece, right? To his murderer, to someone who, by all accounts, right? Well, it's tough. It's tough to say that he didn't have the same impact, right? Or wasn't as important, because certainly what he chose to do echoes throughout our history, right? But I want to, what I'm trying to say is that it's important to acknowledge that they could have chosen to tell the story a lot of different ways. They could have chosen to make this just the Fred Hampton story, but choosing to shine as much light and spend as much time on the FBI, on parts of the Panthers that were darker, sadder, more tragic than the typical hero story might allude to, right, is an important choice, and one that I think makes the film what it is and is moving as it is.
Yeah, it was, and it was entertaining, and it was cool, and it was inspiring, and these are all characteristics that I think are super important in hero movies, especially black hero movies, just for it to be on a fundamental level dope. And I thought this movie was very much dope. Like, it was interesting, just the energy you get from that, right? And for Daniel Kaluuya to even portray a version of Fred Hampton that leaves us with energy. I can only imagine what being in those Black Panther meetings with, you know, impassioned by speeches from Fred Hampton would have felt like and sounded
Yeah, I think it does a really good job uh of carrying their energy, of putting you in that period and in those spaces where it's tangible how much devotion to change, how much commitment to action there was in certain spaces, right? And I think that's part of the depiction of the movie, right? How could Lakeith's character not be, to some extent, swept up in that? And how could you be in the middle of all that and still not see that this is the
Yeah.
person that we need to protect, right? And I think the movie did a good job of putting the viewer there, and that helped with the emotional connection, so that the whole time, you know, I don't know. I think most people, I don't know. That's another thing that I want to talk about too, is that I came in with so much background knowledge on this story that I think I had a very different viewing experience than most people. So one, obviously, you knew that this wasn't going to end well for Mr. Hampton, right?
I did know.
But I mean, that's the thing, right? I think it would be easy for us to take for granted, right? A movie called Judas and the Black Messiah, which actually doesn't even have his name in the movie, right?
Yes.
That we know the story, and I think we're looking forward to this movie as a telling of a story that is important to us. But I think there are probably a lot of people out there that don't know who Fred Hampton is and how he died, right?
Can you break down who Fred Hampton is for the people?
Fred Hampton was the deputy chairman of the Illinois Black Panther Party in the 1960s. He was a very young man at the time. He was somebody who tried to unite various groups in Chicago to form a rainbow coalition, just to further the interests of the disenfranchised, the marginalized, and underserved communities, right? So he tried to connect with powerful groups at the time. In the movie, we see him talk to the Crowns. We hear the Black Peace Stones referenced multiple times. The Young Lords. These are groups that were of people of color in Chicago that were formed to protect communities of color from both the police and white mob violence, right? Which was a thing that would happen often in cities across America. Would be racial attacks across different communities, right? Especially from white people on communities of color, right? So things like the 1919 Chicago race riots and the Tulsa, Oklahoma bombings are examples of this. And we know about violence that was perpetuated in the 1960s as a reaction to the civil rights movement, right? And so there were groups that were formed to protect these communities. Some of them, the Black Panthers, gained a much more political connotation, whereas others were labeled as gangs, evolved in different ways. Some of them became gangs that we know. The Gangster Disciples were mentioned, the Disciples, right, were mentioned multiple times in the movie. That's the GDs, right? The Black Peace Stones, the Peace Stones, the Black Disciples become the BDs. And so we have this kind of funnel effect from these larger organizations that became fragmented into the gangs that we know of now, but also different organizations that we know of now, right? And so it was just really interesting from a Chicago standpoint, knowing that history, seeing all those connections being made. The first 35 minutes of the movie where he's going out, and talking to all these different groups, right? Yeah, for sure. And I'm sure that experience for me was very different than people who don't know the movie. So I think, and maybe I'm overcompensating saying that people didn't know that he was going to die, but I just want to acknowledge that, like, yeah, this was a film that made you, if you do know that, it the whole time watching it, it's just like, wow, look what was stolen from us, right?
He was 21 years old. He was 21 years old doing this, and the confidence he did it with. It almost, to me, is a testament of, let's say, somebody that can sing very well from an early age, or somebody that is recently, dude, we went to go feed a community that was out in the middle of nowhere, and everybody asked this young boy who must have been 12-year-old at the most, around these grown-ups who were spiritually inclined and part of the church. They asked this young boy to pray, and this young man prayed, bro. Like, I'm talking, he prayed in a way that it was not him, that he was just a vessel of what was coming out of him. And that is the same feeling I get watching and knowing about Fred Hampton, how young he died, but also what he was trying to accomplish in his lifetime. Thank you so much for the history. Like, even for me, like, I'm learning some things from how you break that down. And I like the fact that you pointed out how gangs, the lineage and history of how gangs got to where they are now and where they started as means of protecting the people. So my question to you, and think about this because I've been thinking about it too. Do you think you would have been part of the Panthers at that time?
I honestly don't know. I
Neither
think
do I.
I think a lot of that depends on your peoples, right? Um, who would my father have been? Who would he have been affiliated with? Like, who would I have grown up around? Who would have been my uncles? I think determines a lot of that, right? And has always determined a lot of that. I think from a Chicago standpoint, right, where you grow up, the territory that you're born in might determine, a lot of who you determines who you go to school with, it determines who you come up with, and you form relationships based on that. So whether I would have been part of the Panthers or part of the Disciples or part of the Crowns, I think very much depends on geography. Um, but another thing I just wanted to say that your comments brought me to was that, yeah, man, I think it's cool to see the history of these different groups and organizations, and that and to see depicted the way that gangs were started as community organizations to feed people, to protect people. um and this movie didn't go super far in doing it, but I something that I picked up on it and I would love to see focused on more and brought to the spotlight more, is that these organizations became the gangs they became later because of things like this, because the leadership that held it together was assassinated and jailed and beaten and tortured and like had some over policed and over surveilled, right? So when you do that to the people that have genuine interest in leading these groups and have genuine interest in the community, when you treat these people as the danger to national security, as we saw, the higher ups in political government and the FBI focusing efforts and attention on someone like Fred Hampton, it's important to draw those connections and to determine that the things we see as risk factors in Black communities and communities of color today didn't arise out of nowhere and didn't arise out of some inability for Black people to cope in society, man. Our leaders were taken away. This was done to us on purpose. And
The disorganization is a circumstance of the actions that were taken to cause disorganization.
yeah, 100%, 100%. And we're still recovering from that. It's still hard for people to organize. It's still hard for these groups that have been fractured by the absence of leadership to come together for the community, because everyone is so focused on survival, man. So um yeah,
Yeah, it pulls one to the conversation that we've had before in the past, which is like, what is then the right criteria or the right characteristics for the next great Black leader to push us forward? We had Obama for a few years, right? And so that was, we can all as a consensus go, okay, that was our leader. But then, now that him stepping away from that particular position of power and a lot of controversy within the Black communities regarding how people feel he delivered on the mandate that he had promised and, whatnot, that's a whole episode on its own. But it makes you wonder, one, do Black people have a savior complex? And two, where who is the next leader that we need?
uh I think first, yeah, I want to just acknowledge that Black leaders and the difference between someone in a position of power who's Black and someone who is in a position of leadership whose energies are primarily focused on the advancement of Black people are two very different things, right? Those are two very different types of Black leader, right? Yeah, and so when it comes to, do Black people have a leader complex? I don't know if we have a leader complex, but we've certainly been traumatized when it comes to leadership, right? We've certainly had people arise to fulfill roles of leadership in academia, in organizing, in advocating, in community service. We've had leaders that have been taken from us in various ways, whether that be through the system of mass incarceration or assassination, or various other means by which Black progress has been undermined. But I think so. Yeah, we can't ignore the fact that it is demoralizing as a people to have your leaders, right, taken from us over time. I don't know if we've developed a complex where we look where we have become unable to function without a leader, but I think that we are still dealing with from that trauma. I think something amazing that the movie does is that it makes you fall in love with Fred Hampton and the idea of Fred Hampton, and mourn, even while he's still on screen, the leader that we lost, all the while he's advocating that the power is not with him but within the people. Right? They're sitting around the night before he's murdered, the night before he's supposed to go back to prison, trying to figure out what they can do to keep him free. And his response is, y'all need to figure out what y'all can do to open this clinic. I'm just a person. They can jail me. You can jail a revolutionary, but you can't jail the revolution.
Yeah.
And so, no, I don't think Black people have a leader complex. I think we do need to continue to be a village, to grow our own homegrown leaders within our communities and push for that. But I think that the message stands strong, that the power is within the people. The power to create change becomes not when we find the one person who is going to represent us, but when all of us become invested enough in change to represent ourselves, and to represent our neighbors who are unable to represent ourselves, and join in collective voice to make what we want to see happen.
Yeah, it does. What it did make me look at the idea of, let's say Fred Hampton were to have his Mandela moment. Let's say he does not get assassinated and eventually ends up leading, the Black community and or the free world. Do other communities also go through a similar struggle that South Africa that South Africa went through, because of this savior complex that comes with our leaders? Like, I'm trying to find, and it's hard to articulate, but I'm trying to find the correlation between these godlike leaders that we have and then the subsequent disorganization within the political systems that they create. If you understand my question. It's not even a question. It's just something that I've been contemplating.
Well, yeah, I think it's very complicated, and I think the answer to that has to do with a variety of things, including, is the person who's leading the revolution the person who is then put in power to lead whatever follows, right? Just because someone is the right person to galvanize a community for change doesn't mean that person is the person that needs to be in charge of creating the structure that follows, at least not by themselves, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's where it's important to have leaders that are a great leader. Great is someone who can identify where someone else's expertise would be the best for the community, right? And so I think a lot of times, because people who are able to exercise their political will often become figureheads, then and it becomes difficult to separate this person's actions to actually affect change versus their actions that are virtual signaling to maintain power. And so I think that complexity actually means that it's better for us to hand over that power, to transition it, right? And so that's where you have things like maximum time that you can serve in a certain position, right? But yeah, to answer your question, I think it's more complex than just the people not being able to let go. It's this whole system of power where influence and your ability to sway public opinion keeps you in the spotlight, even if you're not the most appropriate person to be pulling strings once you've done something good or seen as great or been a part
Yeah.
of the process to free people. So it's tough. But I think it's more complicated than a complex. I think it's the way society is set up, right? Once you achieve power, it's set up for you to keep it because, you know, the people who made the rules happen to be the people in power and wanted to keep it.
And that's how that goes. That's how that goes. Which is why I appreciate the Fred Hampton um, theology so much of a unity and a system that almost governs itself without a single head, but caters and tends to specifically the needs of the people, right? And that is something that, speaking from somebody who now is in a country that is overran with corruption, that has continuous energy issues, shit, they might even cut the lights on us tonight, you know what I mean, with unscheduled load shedding. This is a country that 15 years ago was exporting electricity. Now we're over here and we're in a place where it's bad, right? So speaking at the proverbial front lines of the change that needs to happen within my country, and watching a movie like that gives me the energy to advocate and continue pushing for systems and solutions that are determined by the people, and moving the power away from the hands of what is clearly an irresponsible government. And I
think
said
it
it
should.
here first. I said it here. in case they want to run it back and pull me up for my words, and I'll say it again. What has been left to us in the country of South Africa is a massive liability that has been brought to us by the same people that fought for our liberation. Now we thank them for the liberation that they fought for us. However, they put us in a precarious position where my future and the future of my children is now jeopardized by the greed that these people have brought aboard. I am not a political person, but I am an advocate for the people.
That's mad spicy. That's mad spicy talk for a capitalist, my friend. That's
Ooh,
mad spicy
the
talk for a
enlightened
capitalist, my
capitalist I
friend.
am. The enlightened
Ah,
capitalist I am.
if there could be such a thing, I think Brother Fred might have some words for you about your words, brother. But
You don't
but I
think
would
there's
I
you don't think there's dude, we had a whole episode on altruism and capitalism. We can't
I well we I think we have divergent beliefs on can a capitalist be altruistic? Yes. Can capitalism be altruistic? I don't know. I think you're relying on too many good eggs to make that whole system. But I digest. I think
New
what the
world
movie should.
order.
I think what the movie absolutely should do is galvanize our generation and remind us that this is probably the person that we've talked about on this podcast that has been nearing the center of public discourse that I feel most comfortable calling a hero.
Mm.
And we saw this person not in fancy boardrooms, not in, on the steps of Capitol Hill, we saw this person in soup kitchens and in classrooms and in gymnasiums and in public like schools, like what's it called, public centers, youth centers. We saw this person out about in the community, right? And that's what a hero is, right? Teachers, organizers, social workers, right? People that just care, right? So I think that's an important reframing to do as well.
I like how you pointed out the action that was behind the words, man. And there's nothing greater than, there's no better feeling of helping than helping with your hands and your time and being there with the people, man. And so I'm sure a lot of young black men and black men in general walked away with that same feeling and that same energy from that movie, right? So that's why I think it's important, and that's why I thank you for touching on it and for bringing it up, because when I was watching with my younger cousin, he didn't know the story of Fred Hampton at all, right? But then bringing that to him, he left that, he was like, yo, this is the most inspiring movie that I've ever watched. And I said, yeah, this is a story of our people. This is a story of young Black men who feel who feel as though the system is not necessarily where they want to see it at, and would like to express that in the many different forms that they can, and are hindered by the options that they have to be able to express that, right? And so I think that's that story, and seeing a man be so fearless about ideas that are so spicy, that is inspiring, man. And I encourage everybody to be fearless about their ideas. I think that for me is a guiding light for what I search for in books and in information, is for to be confident and fearless in my thoughts.
Yes, fiercely articulate, right, about the things that matter. And yeah, man, I'm glad that your peoples was enjoying the film. It definitely touched me. I'm extremely biased because Fred Hampton is a figure that looms large in my mind, and definitely in the spaces that I occupy. But I love this film. It was definitely one of my favorites of the year. Shout out to the
Yeah,
cast for an amazing job. I mean, there's definitely a conversation that's going on right now about Black British actors portraying important African American roles.
that's a
Uh,
conversation.
I think it is a conversation, but I think Daniel Kaluuya made sure that it remains a conversation because of what a great job he did. You know what I mean?
Bodies it.
Like,
Bodies
so
it.
I think he did a great job. I think Lakeith Stanfield, when we talked about Black actors, is one of the people that I was like, if this person has chosen a role, I'm going to check that film out. And for him to play such a conflicted, a character that must have been so hard to play, so hard to search for the motivations and identify and bring to life. That was amazing to watch. And then I wish I knew this young woman's name, but the lady who played Fred Hampton's wife,
Mm.
um,
We can look that up.
like,
I'll look her name up.
wow, did she body that? And I just thought that even the moment where she tells him that how she feels worrying about him and their child, knowing that having given his life, right, even before he died, to the struggle, freed him of the responsibility and freed him from, saying, feed him up to say certain things and be willing to put his life on the line in certain ways, where she had to care about that child, right? And that's just a position that, the strength to be forced to be both the warrior and the revolutionary and the nurturer and the mother that women that are part of the revolutionary struggle are put in. I think this film did an amazing job highlighting that. So the female characters in this were dope. I just love this. I just dug this film, man. And in a
Yeah.
year of great Black films and lots of diverse Black films, I think this one stands out for me for sure. Judas and the Black Messiah. That's the review, baby. All the way live. Put the stamp on it. Big black stamp on the big black movie. That's what's up.
Dominic Fishback is the name of the female actress. Ashton
Yeah.
Sanders is the other who played Larry Roberts. Jesse Plemons, who was also in Breaking Bad. That's the white detective. This dude he's nice with it too. Jesse Plemons is nice. He's good at playing these weird characters.
Yeah, I'm not really sure how I feel about this being yet another white character who like is doing some pretty terrible things, and then later in the movie, like, we see that he, like, his superiors or other guys doing some even worse stuff, and he's like, but and he's shaken to the core of what he believes about what they're doing out here. Like, yeah, you idiot. Like, I don't know, man. That's a continuous trope in these in films about Black leaders is and there's often these white characters that are portrayed in such a weird way that it's almost just to give the white audience an out. You know what I mean? Like, an identifiable moment where he realizes his racism, and it's like,
You
I
mean
don't know. I don't.
Brad Pitt coming to save the day at 12 years a slave at the end of the day? You mean, is that who you're referring to?
I haven't decided.
Tina Fey in Soul?
I haven't decided how I feel about the depiction of that character and the inclusion of that, like, half turn. I don't feel like it was necessary, but that actor, to your point, did do a good job. I thought a lot of the scenes with him eating, a lot of the scenes with the other FBI guys like drinking beer, really did play on the pig kind
Mm.
of depiction that the movie kind of centered itself around as far as the police. I thought that it was shot
Interesting
well. There were
pick.
some amazing cinematic choices right there. Yeah, for sure.
Hey man, while we're in this neighborhood, and let's get into further cinematic discussions with what is supposed to be our recommended and review. Last week I watched the movie. I told you to watch it. You did not want to watch it. I had to convince you on numerous occasions to watch said movie. You still didn't want to watch it. You planned an entire evening where you would be able to watch this movie. I was patient. However, I cannot be patient any longer because I really do want to hear your thoughts on Malcolm and Marie, my brother. What you think of that movie?
I liked it. I
Did you
thought
now?
that it. Yeah, I did.
You seem conflicted
I
about it though.
I have a lot of thoughts on it. I don't think it's perfect, but I think, yeah, just again, we've gotten so many different kinds of Black films this year, and I it is very much up my alley in terms of like I'm the film guy who gets excited about a movie that's trying, the minimal actors, minimal sets type
Yeah,
of thing. They're in and around the house the entire movie. They're the only two actors in the film. I like that type of stuff.
yeah.
I like dialogue heavy. So this was up my alley in its form and its structure. Um,
That's what I said last week too. I was like, I was like, you're gonna dig it. I told you you're gonna dig it. And I said if you're a movie lover, this is definitely one to check out. I know some movie lovers that have called it basic and have called it film school-esque has been some of the criticisms that I've read.
Now I can understand some of those
Mm,
criticisms, but I don't think that I can understand. I think I could hear a lot of criticisms about this movie and agree, and still feel like it was more than worth the watch, and even worth a rewatch or two.
yeah.
Right. So one of the first things I want to just get your take on is: did you like the black and white?
I love the black and white. I love the black and white. Also, the film that they shot the movie on is an ode to an old film style. Quentin Tarantino also likes to shoot films in a similar style. Granted, his ones are more wide scene and wide scope. I think he shoots on like is it an 8mm or a 12mm? I'm not entirely too sure, and I could be very off with those numbers. So do not put that on your. But he yeah, it's an ode to a cinematic movie style uh of a movie. So the black and white, for instance, I appreciated, let's say, a movie like 12 Angry Men, right? And I appreciate, let's say, like an old Casablanca. Like I'd watch those types of flicks. I mean, even Sin City, right, which is an animation but it's black and white, I think is absolutely dope. So it's all about the intention that they use the black and white for. And in this particular movie, despite the texture that they were going for, I think the polarity of those two colors speaks to the polarity of the emotions within the movie. And I think that movie is completely thought out in that manner. Did you dig the black
Yeah,
and
I
white?
agree. I thought I think black and white is I think if you're taking a love story, if you're taking the topic of love seriously, then black and white is always gonna. I think we just have a connection to old movies and a nostalgic romance that takes place in black and white. So I
Mm.
think to root this story of realistic love in that nostalgic old like romantic framing was really a cool choice. I think it does make you focus in on the actors and their emotions. So for that, I think it as a stylistic choice, I can appreciate it. Although there were certainly shots within the movie that I thought would have hit really hard in color.
The mac and cheese. When he was eating the mac and cheese, if they would have made the mac and cheese in color, that would have been lit. Every time she was smoking a cigarette, that would have been great.
Yeah, there were definitely some shots of the house and of them um just like kind of hanging out, especially the shots without dialogue. I think were so beautiful and lingering
Mm.
that I almost wanted to see some of them in color. But I overall, I don't think the black and white detracted from the movie at all. I think that was a cool choice.
Yeah, that
The
bathtub
reason,
scene.
yeah. Well, I'll just come out and say, so the whole movie, I think, is, we can say it is about a fight without giving away too many spoilers.
Nah, dude, it's too late now. We definitely have to get into the specifics of it. It's too
This,
late now. Skip this part.
this is the
Spoiler alert.
spoiler review. All right, this is the spoiler review, ladies and gentlemen. So, take a break, watch the movie if you ain't, and come back to the All the Way Live podcast.
There's no true spoiler to the movie, dude. It's just like it's
There is,
it's war,
because
dude. This
I
movie's about war, dude. This is a war movie, is what it is.
sure,
Even the
sure,
setting,
but
right? The house is set in like what a trench is. Just saying.
I would say that there's definitely spoilers in this movie from the standpoint of, and this is the really beautiful thing they did to illustrate arguments.
A lot of times you'll argue around a topic that's at the core, right? They say a snowflake is always centered around a speckle of dirt. So you can have all these complex, tangents of arguments and frustrations that are all centered around this one little piece, right? And we don't get what that one little piece is until about 2/3 through the movie of what she's really upset about. And so that I think that
On point.
I think that is on point, because a lot of times, sometimes we know something, we feel wronged and we harbor it for a long time, and we go in and we get angry and go in based on that. But other times we're processing in real time what we're really angry about, and a lot of times we're at the same time trying to stop being angry, and before we found out really what we're angry about. And I think that is kind of found out how to say what we're angry about. And so in that sense, I think that turning point in the movie where she finally acknowledges that not only is she upset that he didn't thank her for her help in creating the movie, but that she really not, and that it was her story, but that she really wanted to star in the movie and felt that she had done a better job as the star of the movie. And so I think when you rewatch the entire movie, knowing that from the jump, it's very easy to see the moments where he said something that's gonna make sure that the fight continues.
Yeah. But they do that to each other throughout the whole movie. That's the war element of it. It's like a perpetual build. It's like a gradual buildup of who can tear the other person down the most. And I found it very interesting the tools that they use to be able to stab each other. Right? You see sex used as a tool. You see power used as a tool. You see money used as a tool. You see skills used as a tool. And I found it interesting in how I was watching it with my lady, right? So as we're watching it, and Zendaya's character starts to now go at his work, right? And starts going deep into, your fraud, your this ego that you have is built on nothing. The whole concept of yourself as a filmmaker is phony, and you're just a copy paste artist. In listening to that was one of the moments where I was like, wow, because that is breaking a man down at his core, right? You shake who he is as a person by going after his ego and his confidence and whatever. And when I heard that, I was like, damn, that is intense. So whatever he followed up with after that, I thought was I was like, there's nothing worse. She just broke this man down, and whatever he said, I found it to be almost comparable. Now, watching it with other people and listening to how other people have said it, everyone is clearly saying Malcolm went way too far in what he was saying to Murray. I don't know if I'm one of those people yet. I need to rewatch it again, but I didn't walk away with the feeling of, oh, he's all the way wrong. I think both of them were equally as wrong.
Really?
Yes.
Really? You think they were both equally wrong?
I don't
even
think
though he didn't include her even though he didn't thank her for making for the movie?
Yo, now that he's wrong about, right? Let's get that like out the way. I think he is wrong about not doing that. Now, if if I'm wrong about doing that and my partner is not communicating that with me, we suspend the total possibility that it could be that he was thinking work and he wasn't thinking her at the moment, which happens. I'm not making excuses for this dude, but there is a reality in which that could be the case where he doesn't put that on her. Like, for instance, I know I don't, if I have to celebrate something, especially celebrate my partner, I'm not going to do that in a public manner. I'm going to do that in the confines of my home.
But even if you just created the most public version of her experience and put it and made it the product that your career is based on, the thing that you're celebrating,
I said he's wrong. I didn't. I said he's wrong for not putting her
I
in
think
that. But I do know a reality where he could justify that to himself. I think that's a better way to put it.
well, yeah, of course, but I don't think your ability to justify something to yourself determines your level of wrong.
Yeah.
Right. I think
Yeah.
so. When I saw this movie the first time I watched it knowing that they were going to be arguing for the most of the movie, right? And I watched it to understand, to see not necessarily to see who was right or wrong, but to see, I was more interested in what type of relationship they were depicting with the premise of like, what can we learn about relationships? And the reason that I say that he is certainly more wrong than her is that he said a lot of things to her that were hurtful, but they didn't all add up and amount to anything specific, right? Or anything that I felt was her fault, right? Everything she said created a profile of him based on the way that he's treated her, and it all built on each other part of it, right? If he had just not thanked her for supporting him in an unrelated movie, that's one thing. But I think that when she said that he didn't thank her because he knew it would make people wonder how much of her contribution is the part to be praised in this movie, right? He didn't cast her because then the focus becomes on her and it's not just his project and his brilliance, right? I feel like he did take her for granted for so long, and then and all it would have taken was a thank you to make that okay, and he didn't even do that, right? Whereas she was, as a recovering addict, did a lot of wrong to him, a lot of things that a lot of motherfuckers wouldn't have stood for. She said some things that I was like, whoa, you did what? But none of that was that's hard, but that's not necessarily her fault. In the same way, ignoring her and using her story and failing to compensate her as emotionally or professionally, I would say he was more in the wrong from what I understood from the whole story.
The reason I said, and you're right. He was wrong for definitely not saying all that stuff. So the reason I say they were both wrong, right? It's like when you're in a relationship and you agree to forgive somebody for something, when you agree to forgive somebody for something and you pass forward to why are you smiling? You think I'm about to?
No. I'm reminded of the point in the movie where he thought everything was all good. And he was like, just stay like this. Think happy thoughts. And then he went to the bathroom and came back and she was crying. And he was like, no.
That part is relatable. So I was getting to.
You were saying when you promise to forgive somebody.
Forgiveness, right? In a relationship, you forgive somebody. What that then means is that you do not bring it up. And shout out to my homegirl for putting me onto this game. Is you do not bring it up when you're angry with each other. You do not speak about it behind somebody's back, and you do not hold a grudge over it. right? And then no. The third one is you take it upon yourself to move past it. That is saying you forgive somebody in a relationship. Otherwise, if those things keep coming back, talk about it behind their back, bring it up when they're angry, then you haven't moved past it, and you're kind of idle in that place. So what I was saying is that they were both wrong in how they approach this, and he was wrong in how he in not acknowledging her and taking her for granted, and she was also wrong in the ways that she had brought up what she had brought up to him, and they're both wrong in their inability to forgive each other for the things that they had said that they're going to forgive each other with, therefore using them as daggers. Now, as you said, I'm not the arguing type of guy. I don't raise my voice. I'm not that type of dude. Too chill for that. I walk out the door. I wouldn't have lasted in that situation. That is entirely too much for me. Too much.
All right.
Question for you. Which argument was the most relatable to you?
A lot of it was relatable, right? I think I saw great and terrible parts of a lot of my relationships and in myself and a lot of those conversations. I think that was the point, right? Something that definitely resonated with me was the idea when she was saying that once you're sure somebody loves you, you don't think about them again, right? Now, I wouldn't say that's true about myself, but I would say that there have certainly been past relationships where I got so sure about us that I stopped doing maintenance on us, right? I tried to fix up everything in my life so that by the time everything else was fixed, I could move us into that part of our relationship and we would be good because I knew you loved me, right? But that's not how love works. Love requires maintenance. Relationships require attention and back and forth. And they're not something that you can get to a certain place, hit save game, and focus on other things, right? And so that level of comfort when you make somebody I'm the type of person who it's going to take me a long time to even acknowledge that I really feel like you love me. But once you have that, there's no going back on that for me. And something that I've had to learn over time is that even though we've reached that point and there's no going back on that for me, that's the way that I operate. That doesn't mean that there's any less effort, any less back and forth, any less communication that's required to keep that relationship in this place that makes me comfortable, that makes me happy. So that's something that resonated with me. What resonated with you?
Like his monologue when he reads the review, the first monologue he gives about the need to be able to express his freedom to express his art, and being in that state. I think almost any review would not have appeased him just because of how caught up he is in his art, right? And so that whole monologue on taking what is ultimately a positive review, but turning it into this worked up thought process of your work, and then like that resonated with me, and that anguish and that frustration and that need for expression and being misunderstood and all of that. I think that heavily resonated with me, and the whole relationship setting where she's just on the bed not paying any attention to him, mainly just laughing at him. That is very much the dynamic of my relationship. So that resonated deeply. But argument wise, you know, he wanted food on the way into the crib, and that was a tough process for him to get. That resonated. I'll come home needing some food, and had to negotiate my way into it.
Yeah.
It's not, but like
Yeah.
on a more serious note, if you want to be more vulnerable with it, that I wouldn't say there's one particular argument about it, but that process of having a long going argument hours into the night, that has been something that I've experienced. No longer anymore. I think communication is key now, but that part resonated. The never-ending fight.
Yeah. Well, something that I definitely took from their fight and something that I want to carry into my own relationships is not to never let yourself find yourself in a place where you're being cruel to your partner, right? There were definitely things said on both sides that were intentionally cruel, right? And I'm definitely somebody who is quick. I don't de-escalate, I evacuate, right? So like
Jack
if
don't
there's a
see them
situation going on,
cuts.
big facts, big facts. If I feel like tensions are getting too high, I'll be like, all right, you know what? I'm gonna just separate myself from the situation. I'm gonna go take a breather. You take a breather. And I've learned in past relationships that not everybody can handle that too. Other people feel abandoned if tensions get high, and you just say, "All right, I'm out. I need some time," right? And so there's something to be said in terms of the never-ending fight, right? Of being there, because that is communication, right? And
Yeah.
so I wouldn't even say
Yeah.
that the existence of a long drawn out fight in your relationship means that you're not communicating, as long as you're doing that without cruelty, as long as you're doing that in a way that's constructive, right? Like I'm definitely somebody who has very long talks with female friends that I'm not even in a relationship with, because people have a lot of things that they don't know what to do with, a lot of emotions they don't know what to do with, a lot of signs that they're getting from their partners that they don't know how to read, that they don't want to be the person who is nagging or insecure or underconfident, right? The way that Zendaya reacted to when he says, "You get meek around Taylor," and she says, "I don't get meek. I don't say anything because I don't have nothing nice to say." People don't want to be, bitchy or overbearing, or like we're dealing with so much of this stuff in the back of our head, trying to be, as she again says at the end of the movie, the best partner our partner has ever had, right?
Yeah.
That I think it's inevitable that you're going to have long fights. It's inevitable that you're going to say things that hurt your partner, but it's important to know when you're being cruel and to keep yourself from being cruel to your partner at all costs. And don't let anybody be cruel to you. Call that shit out. If you feel your partner is being cruel or saying something cruel, raise that red flag, right? In the relationship. It's tough. It was tough to watch.
So last episode, I put it amongst Mo Better Blues. I don't know if I still put it there now, but how far off was I in putting it within that same Blu-ray DVD shelf?
Not far. And that's the exact criteria that I think is perfect for it. This is something that, in terms of Black films, I want this tonally different, beautifully shot black and white piece as a part of that collection.
Good.
But Mo Better Blues is a hell of a film now.
It's a hell of a movie. It's a hell of a movie. And this movie's an ode to it. And that's why I found it so interesting that John David Washington played a similar internally conflicted, misogynistic man who's, grappling with his passion and his emotions and his dedication to his work, but then the balance of relationships and the messiness of that. Watching John David do that, especially as a Mo Better Blues fan, was so enjoyable. It's just, you watch that, it's like, yeah, man, it's you your daddy's son. You your daddy's son.
That's funny. I actually thought Zendaya was the stronger performer in this. I think that her face and her body language spoke volumes in silent moments of this film. But I think the relationship with Mo Better Blues makes sense. Mo Better is a conflicted artist, and it shows all of the spaces he carries this conflicted energy, right? This immense talent, but uncertainty of what to do with it. And it pervades his musical career, pervades his relationships, pervades all of those things. And I think in this film, in Malcolm and Marie, we see that uncertain, but certainly like ferocious energy, right? That creative energy come home, and we see it exchanged between two people, right? That the art is centered around, right? I think a beautiful part of this movie that illustrated that rung true for me was that transfer of energy,
right? Somebody's angry and the other person is trying to figure it out and get to the root of it, and then somebody blows up and somebody's left wounded, and the wounded
Yeah.
person comes back and blows up, and now the other person feels wounded, right? And there's just this constant flow, right? And you can feel the argument shift, and I'd hate to put winners and losers on it because I don't think that's the right way to think about these types of conversations, but you feel the energy shift into who's gaining momentum, who's getting their shit off, who's getting their argument. And I think that is yeah, man, is beautiful to witness and watch. And that painful understanding that the person who knows you best, the person who has seen you at your worst, is exactly the person that you're standing in front of that has every right to be angry at you and all the ammunition in the world to pick you apart, right?
That's
So how do you
that's the fear,
go
like
ahead.
that's the fear of being vulnerable is that's the fear of being vulnerable, is giving somebody that ammunition to be able to hurt you in that way and to know your deepest, darkest parts, and putting the responsibility of your most sensitive and vulnerable things into their hands. And I think that movie, just people see them shooting it at each other. But that being said, out of 10, what are we giving it out of our all the way live score?
I give it a solid 8. Give it a solid 8 out of 10.
I like that movie a lot, man. That shot where they at the table and they're shooting. You can stop this movie at almost any point and it looks like a fly picture.
Yeah, for sure. It's
At almost
very
any
beautifully
point.
shot. Yeah, it's amazing, right? It draws your eye to the right thing. And I think that, yeah, its focus on the characters is very important. What does it mean to be seen by somebody, and for that to be true vulnerability, right? For somebody who sees you to be angry at you, who knows you to be angry at you. I think that's where some of the cruelty comes from, is you want to show that you're that you can, if the argument gets this heavy, that I'm the meaner one, so you don't ever want to take it here again because the last shit you said really hurt me. So I'm gonna make sure that if we ever do this again, you think twice about being that mean to me. I think that the shots reflected that balance of power, who's falling off the couch, who's laying on the floor, who's on top as they kind of roll over and cuddle and hang out and stuff. I think there were a lot of choices. I could see how somebody might say that this seems very film school because there are so many elements of the directing that directly connect to the plot in a way that's almost obvious.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed that, right? For a movie that is relishing in nostalgia and using it to its advantage, your expectations, it worked for me.
And if we're gonna talk about things that the movie does right, we can't go any further with. I was gonna think of first the soundtrack of Malcolm and Marie is incredible, but also the soundtrack of Judas and the Black Messiah is also super fly. That Jay-Z Nipsey track, ooh boy, that's that fire.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of amazing. A lot of people showed up for that. There's some G Herbo on there. That's very, very dope. That first track, man,
Polo G.
I forget what it's called. No. The first track on the album after the Chairman Jr.'s intro, that song goes in. There's a Rhapsody track on there about COINTELPRO. That's fire. Yeah,
Gotta
I
love,
mess with
man.
it. I love it, man. There's so much. I've said it 2-3 times on this episode already, but there's so much as I look back across the last like 8 months with Soul, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, Sylvie's Love, this, you know what I mean? There's so much just thought-provoking and diverse art coming out by Black folks that I'm happy to be taking it all in. I'm happy that these are films that I'll get to watch, with kids, with, partners, with even my mom and my folks. And I'm happy to have things that I'm so excited about to share with my people in the truest sense of that.
Hey, man, good art all the time. Good art all the time. Listen, before we get up out of here, man, we got UFC 258. If we're still celebrating Black excellence, our boy Kamaru Usman, the Nigerian Nightmare, came through, did what he had to do against Gilbert Burns, ran through the man the way that we expected and anticipated him to do it. Masterful performance by Kamaru Usman, man. This dude's on a 13-win streak right now.
Yeah, man. Shout out to Kamaru. It's no easy feat to be fighting somebody who you sparred with, who knows your style, right? Who knows what to expect more than the average opponent. And for him to come out, the dude wasn't no chump either. You know,
No.
he definitely came out, some accurate leg kicks. You saw a little bit of strategy of him starting to chop at the leg, coming in
He
with
knocked
some
Kamaru down a bit for a second. He hit him with that
in the
with that
first
shot.
few seconds. So this was no slouch of a fight, but Kamaru maintained his composure and just the accuracy of some of that handwork, man. That hand speed is real. So
It was a beautiful fight to watch, man. It was a beautiful fight. I'm excited to see what this man continues to do. The UFC continues to provide quality entertainment. Shout out to Justin Gaethje from a couple of fights before. I think he was 2 fights down on the card. Went crazy. Another just advancing the entire time, dominating performance. Yeah, man, it was quite a fight night.
You said Justin Gaethje. Do you mean Gastelum?
But I meant Gastelum.
I figured you meant Gastelum.
Yeah.
Hey man, listen.
yeah,
I think we done fed the people, dog.
We done it?
I think we done fed the people. We done came through and we done gave the people. And you know what I know is that you know.
I know.
Y'all know? We know.
It's
known. It is known.
It's pretty known.
It is known that I need a new mic stand. But also, we know that y'all have a lot of choices, man. A lot of options, you know. And from all those options, you chose to be rocking with us. And we appreciate that, man. Clearly, we are a celebration of Black life. But also, we're a celebration of life in general. We're a celebration of celebrating. We're a celebration of y'all, man. Hold on, man. One gunshot for y'all. Real quick. Hold up. One gunshot for us. With that, man, we send y'all on y'all way. Be safe. Love yours. It's still cold. Wintertime this side. So we just talked about mad content that you can curl up and watch. Go check that out. Shout out to all the sisters. Shout out to all the lovers. Peace. Water. We gone.
Super.